I would say the obstacle in keeping doing that is maybe that feeling that I had is I might have a problem, but it's not that bad. I don't need to go do that. Just go try it out. Just go try it out and see if there's not something that is altogether different than the way I was living my life. Because I did not come in to change my life, and yet it helped me change, and I got a peace, a serenity in the middle of rowdy fellowship laughter. I wasn't looking for all of that stuff, and that's what I found. But just to be able to go to a place where I think the other one is you think you're alone. You think you are the only, practicing Zen monk that's got an alcohol issue. If you go in, you will find that there is somebody that comes from your deal or has had similar deal that has a problem. I mean, you're not alone. That's the biggest part. And there's a recovery gym where I live that says, and I love that they have the saying, the opposite of addiction is connection. And sometimes it just boils down to that. The opposite of addiction is connection. And for me, and I know so many people, those last dark years was more about isolation than it was about addiction. And locking myself up in my alone room, or even in the downstairs bedroom of a full family house, was not serving or helping me. But going to a place where somebody knew what was going on or had experienced. I just was so surprised that as unique as my story was, it just wasn't that unique.
Hello and welcome everyone to Push Each Other to the Top podcast. It's me, Jonathan, again, and Brent, and we're excited. Today is a new thing for us. We have our guest. We have a first guest person on the podcast, and I'm going to let Brent introduce Phillip.
Oh, this is, we got Phillip today. Phillip W. From Allenville, Utah. Welcome, everybody. I just want to start out by saying that we are not affiliated whatsoever with Alcoholics Anonymous. This is about our story and our stuff, and we want to share some of our experience, strength, and hope with the listeners. And, the reason I have asked Phillip to join me today is, the name of this thing is Push Each Other to the Top. And Phillip and I have known each other for a lot of years. I saw him come through the doors. Oh, what a sight that was. And I've had a lot of experience and time with him, and we've become lifetime friends. I mean, it's been incredible. But his story is so much different than my story. And I wanted the listeners to understand that it's not necessarily, how much you drank or where you drank or, where you came from in society, but it's about what happens to you inside. And we're all really the same. I come from a hard knocks and went through a lot of stuff when I was out there. And Phillip, anyway, we're going to let Phillip tell a little bit about how he started on this path of recovery, and then we'll just kind of go from there, and I'll throw a few jabs at him, and I'm sure he'll throw them back. So, Phillip, why don't you introduce yourself and give us a little bit of background?
Well, I'm kind of honored to be the first guest on this what's becoming a high-powered internet famous podcast here. Hopefully I don't kill it for you, but I really am honored. I think I've listened to the first 3 podcasts that you guys have done. We're on a delayed release. Interestingly, as I've listened to it, I've known Brent long enough that I could probably have done that podcast for him in the name of Brent, because we know each other and we know each other's story. And that's, we'll get into it, but that's a little bit. And Brent, I'm sure that Brent's talked about it. The fellowship that we get in this thing can be as tight. It's somewhere referred to as survivors of a shipwreck that all come together. And even though our backgrounds may be different and in recovery groups, we get all kinds. I mean, you think you could profile somebody that would come in to recover from alcohol, drugs, and alcohol, and you really can't. It's no respecter of demographic or income or socio-demographic, all the different sociological things you can apply. Brent told you in the previous episodes his background. Mine is I came from a full family, upper middle class, caring parents, wanted the best for their kids. They were in a position they didn't always have that. They were kind of Horatio Alger, worked their way up. I was the first generation to go to college. They worked hard for me to go do that. I went away to college. All the hopes and dreams of the family on me, and went away to college, graduated, had a graduated international business degree. I spent a couple of years overseas. I personally had somewhat of a strong church background. That's not necessarily my family's, but I chose to do that, and I didn't have that story that Brent had. At age 27, his story and my story were altogether different. I think you probably got sober about 27, didn't you?
34.
34. So you were still in your deal. I was in my late 20s when I and it wasn't necessarily my first drink. I had played around with it as a kid, but in my 20s I started drinking. I seemed like a good idea at the time, and it worked for me. It made me a little more confident. I could talk. I could have that courage to go talk and go into new situations, and I loved it, and it worked for me for about 7 years. If it still worked for me, I wouldn't be on this podcast with you. I'd still be out. I'd still be out drinking. I had a good time in the early years of doing that, but it turned on me, and that seems to be a common story for us. I started instead of having it as a tool for me, it became a master. I more and more needed to have that drinking. A lot of my drinking was done while I was away from home. I didn't necessarily want to put this around my kids. Had a great wife. We got married while I was in college. 4 children, three great boys, and then about a 6-year debate for my straggler daughter to come along. And I mean, it was a great family. More and more, I needed to be away for my drinking, though. So I didn't bring a lot of drama home with my drinking, because I did it away. But eventually, those lines started to cross, and more I would come home off a trip drunk. I would drink on the airplane. I drank on the airplane going out. I've rented so many rental cars drunk and turned them in drunk, and things that make me cringe now. And so it started getting in the way of the family. It started to my wife told me about a year after I got sober, and I didn't know this at the time. She said I was looking at my options and trying to figure out what I was going to do. She said it was a tough spot to be in, to consider asking my best friend to leave the house for the sake of the kids. And so that one kind of hit me, and it was a little bit later. So I don't know, those, I guess I probably, the one drinking story I would tell you is my last drinking story. Well, let's start with this. I was drinking on a plane one time, and I had ordered a glass of orange juice with lots of ice, please. And then I would pull out my Evian water bottle and pour from that into the juice, because sometimes I couldn't get the planes to give me as much as I wanted, so I had to start carrying my own. And this guy across the aisle was watching me, and I knew he knew what I was doing, so I offered him some. And he said, no, I had to quit doing that. And I said, how did you do that? Now, coming into business, I usually don't ask a question if I don't already know the answer anyway. But I was really curious about how this guy quit because it was starting to get in the way. And he said, I had to go to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I thought, oh man, that seems extreme. And so we sat and talked there for a bit. I was continued to drink for my drink. And finally he quit talking to me. And I thought about that months later because he had a kind of a hot prospect on. But we learn as we're trying to help people in recovery, we don't spend a lot of time with them while they're messed up, while they're drunk or while they're high. We try and make sure they're safe. And then we say, I'll pick you up in the next morning and we'll go to whatever respective meeting or whatever it is. Anyway, he got me curious. I got up the next morning. I looked up Alcoholics Anonymous in the white pages. That's how long ago this was. And I called, they have a hotline. Each area has a hotline. And I'm here in Utah. And I thought, well, nobody's got a problem in Utah. There's probably one meeting about 30 miles south down in Draper every other Thursday. And I told him where I was. And he said, well, there's a meeting in 55 minutes. It's about 2.5 miles from your house. I said, well, don't take my name down. I'm just inquiring. But I slipped in the back door the way people think they can slip in. And I'm quite sure Brent was in that meeting. And I heard some things that interested me. And they wanted to give me a book. I didn't want to be beholden to anybody, so I bought a book. And I read some of the literature. And over the weekend, I kind of read my story. See, I didn't think I qualified because I had never slept under an overpass. I had never been locked up. I had never lost jobs or homes or anything. So I didn't think I had a problem. I didn't think I qualified. But in that literature, I read exactly my story. And so I came in and started to do this. I kind of threw myself at it. And this is where Brent, I'm going to have to watch him from smirking, but I kind of had it figured out, and I'm a smart guy, and I was going to do it a little different, and I wanted to skip this step, and I wanted to do this, and I didn't need to have anybody helping me, so I kind of did it my own, and I stayed sober for 90 days. I thought that was quite an accomplishment, and then I decided I'm good. I'll go back to drinking, and that's kind of a common story. Brent picked this up and hit it. And I know there's quite a few people that come in and get it the first time. Me, I drank for about 9 more months. And then I was on a trip one time off on the East Coast, really big, important trip. I had my nicest suit on. Meeting ended. I started drinking, checked in my rental car drunk, drank all the way across the country, landed, and instead of going home, I decided to go drink some more till the bars closed down. And then I got on the freeways to come home. But that was just before there was a lot of road construction going on, and you never knew when a road was closed. And I got on a freeway that was closed 100% construction that night, and driving 55 miles an hour through construction zone. I didn't want a speeding ticket, so I kept it below 55 miles an hour. And I came up to the end of that construction zone, and these guys, they had radioed ahead and said there was a guy on. And I came there, and they were yelling at me, why'd you go past the barriers? And I apologized. I said, I'll just turn around and go back. They said, you'll need an escort. And so I sat there patiently, waited for the Utah Highway Patrol to come and escort me. And the short answer to that story is I ended up in handcuffs and was hauled away to the drunk tank for that night. And I was in there. I was in a new world. I had never been in a jail before. I'd hit a new low. We have a saying that when we're drinking at that point, it's an elevator. It's a one-way elevator down, and it will continue to go down until we get off. And then if we want to get back on, it's not going to ever go back up. It's just going to go down. So that next morning, they let me go. I took a taxi. There was no Ubers back then, and got my car out of the impound. And I went to that meeting. Instead of going home, I went to that meeting that I was aware of. And I'm not sure that I could have told you at that time that was going to be my last drink. In fact, I'm quite sure it wasn't. And I mostly went because I knew that there were a bunch of people in there that could refer me to a DUI attorney. And so I went in there, and restarted my journey into recovery. I didn't think I belonged there. I still didn't think I belonged there. I was wearing a suit. I needed those people to know that I was a little different. So even on days I didn't have a meeting, I would wear a suit to the meeting so that these people knew I was different. You can see the smirk. I'm saying this mostly to make Brent smile because he remembers that. He reminds me of these things. And I just kept on going because I had nowhere else to go. And I heard these people, and they were all different from me. And then somewhere along the line, I can't tell you, someone told me, quit listening for the differences and listen for the similarities. And once I started doing that, even these people with totally different backgrounds, older people, women, they all had elements of the same thing that I had been experiencing, that I thought I was doing, that I had thought I was going through alone. And I eventually picked out a guy and asked him if he'd walk me through this process. There's kind of two parts to this. There's the not drinking. There's the making it to the end of the day sober. And that's extraordinarily difficult for people when they first come in. I thought about it all the time. Brent talks about going to a rehab facility, and there's a large number of people that make it into rehabs, and then when their 30-day programs expired, they'll come into Alcoholics Anonymous. And there's a little bit of difference. We talk about in rehab that there's a lot of discovery, a self-discovery and figuring out. And if you throw yourself at it, you can kind of figure out, get to the introduction of some of your issues. And really the recovery happens once somebody finds a group or a fellowship and a program to do that. Mm-hmm. I didn't have a rehab. In the South, they call me a walk-on. I came in and I had a hard time making it. I could make it to a noon meeting. I could make it to noon sober. I could make it to a noon meeting, and then I would go to a 7:00 meeting in the afternoon. But those afternoons were terrible. And I would, there's so many resources now. There's so many podcasts like this one. There's speaker tapes. There's things that you can stream and get. But I had found somebody whose father had been in a 12-step program and gave me a Target bag full of speaker tapes, and that's what I listened to in the afternoons.
One of our differences, Phil, is your spiritual path. Mine, I didn't believe in a God. I didn't have that component. You grew up with a lot of religion in your life. Can you kind of tell us what that was like and how you walked through that a little bit?
Okay. It's interesting because this recovery thing we do is very much a spiritual program. What I like to say, a spiritual program of action. And I'd had that background before. I'd made a conscious step to step away from my religious practice. I don't know that I ever quit believing in God, but I didn't believe in a God that really had an interest in Phillip. In the small state in this small country, and I was just off doing my deal. So I sometimes and sometimes people like me have even a harder time than people that don't have any background. There's this text that we use. There's a whole chapter dedicated to it, and that was my hang up in my first 90 days was I didn't want a God type thing. And it happened early. It was in my first year. It was early in my first year. And the best analogy I can say, it was an unclenching of a fist. When I'm just made an allowance that I might not know everything, that there might be a God and it's not me. And some of the older people in the room say, that's all you need. That's all you need, is to understand that there is a way, there is a God, there is a higher power, and it's not you. And that's what we built on from that. As it went on leapfrogging into my second year, I took a conscious interest in what other people believed. And every weekend I went to a different church, faith tradition. I wasn't looking for something new, but I was curious as to what people believed. And that practice gave me a foundation. Even with all the differences. I mean, I went to all the Christian denominations. I went to a Buddhist monastery. I went to a mosque. I went to a Quaker meeting when I was in Pennsylvania one time. And everywhere I heard, it was, love your God. You love your God by loving your other human beings. And they all had that same message. And it was because AA and the recovery taught me to listen to the similarities instead of the differences. And
Right.
so I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan when people choose a religious choice to have their conscious contact with their higher power. And I'm very comfortable with people when they don't use a religion, but they still practice their spirituality. My practice is kind of spelled out, is very simply a morning prayer and some quiet time each morning. And that gives me a start. And in that prayer, it isn't my opinion. My opinion is my higher power knows what I need. I don't need to ask for anything. So it's almost like I'm reporting in. Let me be awake today to hear the things I need to hear from people delivering it to me. And let me be still enough to be able to say the words that somebody else needs. And then I sit still for 10 minutes. And because I've had this conversation, and then I want to invite whatever's going to happen in, and it's a calming. The last years that I have, my quiet time is more gratitude. Just a gratitude of the time and place that we live, and this real abundance we live in. For me, I've been blessed with a wonderful family. When my boys were in their teenage years, my 10 minutes of quiet was trying to stay 2 steps ahead of them because they kept me running. And then my daughter came along, and it was easier than all 3 of my boys, or harder than all 3 of my boys. And then we'll get into, the last decade of my life, I had some big challenges, and my quiet times would allow me to do that. So,
Right. Another question I'd like to ask you is, your background is so different than mine. We come from a totally different world, but yet we became really, really good friends. I consider you one of my best friends in the whole world. And how did that happen?
well, do you really want to?
You're not.
Do we want to say that on this podcast? It didn't start off that way.
You're just not real easy to get along with.
Wow.
So I want to know how this really came to be. I was sitting here thinking, wow, how did Phillip and I become such good friends? I know a lot of the
we're
answers.
similar in that we're both A personalities and maybe a little bit of an alpha. And alphas don't always mix together in the same room, but
Yeah.
I remember it. You may choose to cut this, Jonathan, but I'm going to tell you anyway. The one thing that we do is we go in, we do the recovery, we do the rooms, we figure out kind of these techniques on how to stay sober, and then we have these steps that kind of help us become better people. But one of the great benefits is the group, the fellowship of what we do, and we can sit in those rooms. But the people that really grab on and have a support group are the people that do things outside the meetings. So there's a lot of going to dinner after, or going out for coffees, or for whatever people do. We had a group at one point that we would go camping in the summer, and Brent and I went on one of these camping trips, and he was hiking up this hill, and I said, "Wait for me," and we went up, and that's maybe the first time that we spent some time together. And Brent is a bit of an irreverent guy. I don't know if that came across in the first 12 episodes, but he decided from the top of this hill over the campground that he was going to moon these guys. And I said, wait, I want to join. And so we double mooned him from the top of this. I think that probably started off our irreverence. I think we get close, and you can probably get a sense of Brent. There's a lot of teasing back and forth, and we take turns doing that. Where there's a lot of direct speaking within our group, within our fellowship. A lot of times when I'm helping somebody, I'm doing it from this desk, and I'm on the phone with somebody, and I can be pretty direct. If somebody asks for my help, I'm a direct speaker. I'm nowhere near Horace. If I had Horace helping me, I would have not been able to be sober. That type of sponsorship would not have worked for me, and I probably would have went out and skinned my nose a little bit more and had to come in later. But I am if somebody asks me to work with them, mentor them through the program, I will speak directly. And one time, as my wife was walking by my office and she heard some of the things I was saying, she goes, "How can you get away with saying that to those people?" And I said, when somebody knows that you love them and that what you're saying is in their best interest, you can get away with saying anything. But the investment is made early that I've got your best interest in mind, and maybe I'll go ahead and tease you about showing up to the meetings always lately, or I'll tease you about any of Brent can get me wound up in a way that a lot of people can't, and that's happened before. He's embarrassed me getting me wound up. So, but you look at our group. You look at our group at that time. We had a 70-something fireman. We had a 20-something young girl in our group. We had some married people. We had some single people. We had my little brother in the group. And we would go to a restaurant of some sort, and the waiter would just look at us and go, "What's the common? How did you guys even come in together?" And it's to me, it's one of the great joys. It's one of the bait and switches of what I experienced, because I didn't come into recovery for that. I was coming in there to save my family and to get people off my butt. So, anyway.
Yeah, we've had a lot of fun on these camp trips. I remember that day. I remember it very, very well, that we climbed that mountain, and it was a big mountain. They could barely see us, but we did moon them, and yeah, I really think that started our friendship, and I think that kind of broke the ice. And we've had so many great times together. We've laughed till we just both cried, but we've also faced some real tough challenges together, and we walked through that. We had a conversation the other day of this guy that we had to discipline, and anyway, it's a long story, but we learned a lot about some of the things that we can and can't do in recovery, and Phillip and I share some of that as well. And but I know Phillip's family really well. I know his kids. His daughter used to take care of my dog. I used to pay her really well when I'd be out on the road.
Brent was her first employer.
Yeah.
$35 to go over and water and feed the dog, which meant I had to drive her over because I think she was 14 or 15. So I got no gas money. It took 30 minutes of my day. And it set an unreal expectation that you can make $70 an hour doing things like this. So, but she holds Brent in very high regard. All my kids know Brent, and
I have a relationship with each and every one of them, and it's wonderful. It's just it never ceases to amaze me the power of our community. The fellowship, how it just starts with Phillip, and then it spreads to his children, his wife, everybody in his life that is close to him. I know, and have spent a lot of time with him, and it's been
spent a lot of time to refer to him, and we made reference to my little brother. Brent took a very good interest in my little brother as he was trying to get sober, and he actually lived with Brent for a while. So
Oh, yeah. Till I had to kick him out.
you had to kick him out because he wouldn't stay sober, and
He
that's
wouldn't stay
that's the
sober.
tough love we do, and it was fun to have a brother in recovery. But I share that also, that common ground with Brent, and that he loved to come in, and he had a hard time staying sober, and one time he just didn't come back in, and in his early 40s he passed away. So we have these lifelong friendships, we have these connections, but I think it was Brent that said to people, when you're coming in, you better buy a suit, because there's a lot of people that don't make it, and it's a very serious thing in that regard.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we joke and everything. And some of the things we laugh at, people will look at us like, oh my God, what's so funny about that? Phillip driving through a construction zone, getting a DUI. I mean, I don't know how many times I've laughed at that story, and some people look at it like, you're insane, like, what the hell were you thinking?
Well, that particular story is funny because nobody, including me, got hurt.
Yeah, exactly.
There's the stories that don't end that well, and I have part of my gratitude often is that I didn't have to go to that extreme or damage somebody else's life so much that, and that's not always the case for people that come in. Some people do a lot of damage. In fact, most people do.
You and I have stuck around long enough that I guess people call us the old timers nowadays.
They call you an old timer.
They call it, well, I don't even want to tell you what they call you, but they one thing, we've been in the community long enough to see a lot of people come and go, and I often talk about, and that's what this podcast is all about, pushing each other to the top. Phillip and I got to see, he mentioned one of these gals that were hanging out with us, like 20 years old. Well, there's a whole handful of these young girls that came into the program that we got to know. And I feel like we raised them. I mean, I feel like we watched them, struggle. One little girl in particular, what does she say? She came in on a BMX and left in a BMW or something like that. And, watch her come in. She was like 14 years old, off the streets, just, going through, and she's still sober today, and she's got her own business, and she's, she just excels. It's so much fun. I know it is for me, and I know it is for Phillip as well, to watch these kids grow up. We've got several gals that went to college, got degrees, and are married now with families. And, we got to experience that. And what a joy that is for us to see. Phillip is involved with lots of people, just like, I was when I was in Utah. And that's the joy of this deal, is to be, to get so close to.
That's the payback, is that you get to go pay it forward and see these people grow. Sometimes they grow up and either move away or, but a lot of times they stay around, and you watch these. It's sometimes hard to watch your own growth. It's very difficult to watch your own growth, and it takes other people to point that out. But to watch these people kind of grow in sobriety, there's, we kind of have this theory that your emotional maturity gets stifled about the time you start drinking, and so we can get some 30s, 40s, and sometimes 50s or more age people in that are still acting like 13-year-old kids. And one of the things, at least the recovery taught me, was that the world isn't out to get me, that it isn't the world's problems that caused me. Because when I walked in, that was what it was. It was a tough boss. It was all these things that were causing my problems. And in recovery, we start taking a look at ourselves and cleaning up our lives a little bit. And we take personal responsibility for those things that happened to us. And and the things that we didn't have responsible that happened to us. Like a lot of people have really tough childhoods, but we get to look at it that we don't own that, what these adults did to us. And but I am responsible what I do with this now. A common friend of ours, Burgundy, has that that very big message is that what I do with what that is now and how I move forward is still all my responsibility. And that's
Right.
it's a huge lesson that I think is beneficial inside or outside of recovery.
Yeah. So, one of the things that we say a lot is, you can't keep it if you don't give it away. And, I know that that becomes really a natural thing. It isn't something that you have to force yourself to do. I mean, helping other people is just comes from your heart. You know where they've been, the path that they've walked, and then you have so much common ground with them that it's real easy to wrap your arms around some of these people when they're brand new and help them along the way, whether that's sponsorship or just sitting down for 5-10 minutes, and spending that valuable time with them.
Mhm.
I just found out yesterday that one of my coworkers, her stepson committed suicide yesterday, 22 years old. And, I often want to talk on this podcast about about people out there. And, Phillip, me, I talk about this quite a bit in meetings that if you're out there struggling, please reach out. I mean, people,
There's so many resources now.
yeah,
There's so many resources.
and we're here to help, and,
Yeah.
and want to push people to the top. And I'll tell you what, when people reach out to us, and we talk about this quite a bit in the meetings, is, it helps us more than it helps them. So don't for one second think that reaching out is going to take up our time or it's a burden to us or anything like that, because it's just the opposite.
Yeah.
We all have issues. We all have problems. I've seen Phillip in tears. I've seen him hurting from the heart. He's seen me hurting from the heart. And, I think the beautiful thing about our fellowship is we can be real and honest with each other. We don't have to hide or pretend that, if one of us is having a hard time, I've had to reach out individually to a lot of folks when I've faced a lot of struggles. And I know you've done the same. I mean, we've had some really good heart to heart talks.
Yeah.
So it's not all fun and games all the time. I mean, we do banter a lot and we do joke around a lot and everything, but there's a part of this that's super, super serious and honest and honesty and willingness to help each other,
There's a jovial a conviviality about it, but it is undercurrented by a very serious thing that we do. But it totally opposite of what I thought the recovery experience was going to be, because when I walked in, it was time to cowboy up and go do this sober thing, because I've got a family, I've got a circle of people that are depending on me. It's time for me to show up in a different way, and I did not foresee that I would have so much fun and laughter, like you said, laughter. In Brent talks about some of these. Brent for a while had a group that we would rent a cabin up in West Yellowstone and go up there, and people knew Brent. He would always invite some of these new people in there, and I think they had an amazing experience of seeing us laughing in a very inappropriate ways sometimes, and then at the flip of a switch into a very serious spiritual conversation, and that just becomes an important part of our life. But the other thing, and I guess this is part I want to. I did not foresee that it gave me these tools, and I like this word, the emotional maturity, but gave me tools on how to go through tough things, an outline for living, if you will. And when I can't do it alone, then I can reach out for others. But this ability to not take in personally things that are not mine to own, and I don't have to get wrapped up in distractions that can send me off. But it also gives me a tool to handle very tough things. I I was able to come in and kind of clean up a little bit, and I raised a very, very happy family and very close relationship with my wife. And she got sick, and at an extraordinarily early age, in her late 40s, started showing signs of memory loss and dementia. And we got in her early 50s, got a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease, and so that permeated the last 13 years of our marriage. But I say often that, at least in regards to the subject that we're talking here, there is no way that I could have done that with the skill level, with the compassion, had I not gone through my own walk through darkness and picked up the skills on how to take care of somebody without having to go in and fix it, because that's a particular one thing that you can't fix. But what I can do is show loving compassion. And before that happened, even with all my skills, I say, I actually tell people all the time that 10 years ago or 15 years ago, a compassionate caregiver was never something that anybody on this planet would want Phillip signed up to do. 9 billion people on the earth. If they wanted a crisis manager or fixer or a control guy, but not a compassionate caregiver. But the sobriety taught me the skills to do that, so that I could take care of her, clear up into her final days. Yeah.
Yeah. It was quite an experience for all of us to watch you go through that. And we all gained a whole bunch of respect for you and the way you handled yourself, how you handled your family. I have a lot of love for Susan and all of your family, each and every one, great people. Just sitting here, speaking of family, looking at Jonathan, thinking, he's not a bad looking guy. DNA really has a lot to do with this thing.
It's about the most slide in backdoor compliment that you can give yourself.
That's right.
Yeah. Well,
he sure looks
centered.
like his dad, doesn't he? Yeah.
He's just being so quiet, sitting over there, and I just thought, somehow we need to engage him and give him a compliment about his great looks that he got from his father.
That's right. No, I'm so impressed. It's so interesting. This world is pretty new to me. I'm still learning. I haven't had this direct experience. I've talked with people about, and I've even taught some addiction recovery in my church to some people that are incarcerated, and I don't really have that story to speak from experience, and I believe in a higher power. I believe in the things that you're both telling me. I love that you've leveled your life up in such a way that impacts so many other people. It's such a miracle to me. It's just amazing. And the thought that comes to me, and I'm thinking about those individuals that are watching or listening to this, and maybe there is someone who's considering, maybe it is about time for me to go dial up the AA and go find a meeting. What advice would you have for that individual who's thinking, maybe it's time?
Is that a question to me? I guess.
Yeah, for both of you.
Since I'm the honored guest,
please.
I would say, well, first of all, you don't have to go to the white pages anymore.
There you go.
It's on the internet, and you can look up Alcoholics Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous, Heroin Anonymous, Overeaters Anonymous. I mean, there's a lot of obsessive compulsive disorders that can be fixed. Well, the largest one then is Alcoholics Anonymous, and every city has some call that can be, and it's answered on the other end by volunteers, not by paid people. So you can get there, you can find out where there's a meeting in the area, and then you walk in and you can listen and you can announce yourself. I mean, I love it when somebody's like, "This is my first time. I just walked in. I don't know what anything this is about." A lot of people do what I tried to do. Just walk in and sit and watch for a little bit. And I always like to recommend that you go to a couple different meetings, because each meeting has its own little different character. Anymore in the last 25 years. You see billboards and you see advertising and quite positive. There are so many recovery centers, rehab centers, centers. You can almost ask around and find out if you want to do that, because that's a way to go as well. I would say the obstacle in keeping doing that is maybe that feeling that I had is I might have a problem, but it's not that bad. I don't need to go do that. Just go try it out. Just go try it out and see if there's not something that is altogether different than the way I was living my life. Because I did not come in to change my life, and yet it helped me change. And I got a peace, a serenity in the middle of rowdy fellowship laughter. I wasn't looking for all of that stuff, and that's what I found. But just to be able to go to a place where, I think the other one is, you think you're alone. You think you are the only, practicing Zen monk that's got an alcohol issue. If you go in, you will find that there is somebody that comes from your deal or has had similar deal that has a problem. I mean, you're not alone. That's the biggest part. And there's a recovery gym where I live that says, and I love that they have the saying, the opposite of addiction is connection. And sometimes it just boils down to that. The opposite of addiction is connection. And for me, and I know so many people, those last dark years was more about isolation than it was about addiction. And locking myself up in my alone room, or even in, the downstairs bedroom of a full family house, was not serving or helping me. But going to a place where somebody knew what was going on or had experienced. I just was so surprised that, as unique as my story was, it just wasn't that unique. So,
yeah. And I really liked your analogy about getting in the elevator. The elevator keeps going down. It doesn't go up. There's in some of the literature that we read, it talks about it gets worse, never better. It continually goes down. And, people that cross that line and become a true alcoholic, you realize that it's overwhelming. And if you want to stop the pain, there's so many people like us that are available to walk through. Like you said, you don't have to do this alone. That connection is so vitally important. So I really like what you say. I really liked it. Yeah.
Well, and you go to a place that's experienced the story of the guy that falls in the hole. The guy that falls in the hole, and people walk by, and the doctor walks by and writes a prescription and throws it down in the hole, but that doesn't really help him. There's a lawyer that goes by and gives him some advice, and the clergy comes by and says a prayer for him, and then this other guy walks by and jumps in the hole, and the guy says, "Well, that's not fixing anything. Now we're both in the hole, and but the guy says, "Yeah, but I've been down here before, and I know the way out." It's the best analogy. It just I love that part, because most people in those rooms, at least the rooms that I go to, the recovery rooms I go to, aren't professionals. They haven't been professionally trained, but they were where I was, and they had made their way out, and the things that they could share, if I was willing to listen, helped me get through that.
Wow, I love that.
Not easy. Not easy. I would say it was the hardest thing that I had to do. But it's not always hard now. After that first initial part, and I tell new people this all the time, it's not always this difficult. You get out, and to stay sober is so much easier than getting sober, but it just takes a little continued effort.
I'm hearing Horace's voice. And I haven't even met the guy.
Don't please.
You think that's hard?
Oh,
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
there are
Thinking's hard.
yeah,
Thinking's hard.
and that's the other. There are so many people now, and at least in the place I live, there are so many meetings to choose from. That yes, Horace can say it, or I can say it, or Brent can say it. You're going to eventually find somebody that speaks the words that permeate your ears.
Exactly. Yeah.
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 So cool.
Yeah.
That's so
Wow. What a great podcast.
No, it's fun.
Phillip, I really, really appreciate you coming on with us and having this experience because our whole thoughts here are really to help other people. I know right now, you look at our list and there's a lot of people that we know that listen to this podcast, but eventually I hope it starts to get out there and people find us that are looking for that help or looking for that way out. We might not have all the answers, but we've walked this walk together. We've been through this path, and we know that there is a solution, and that's what I was looking for when I came, is a solution to no longer live the way I was living and try to be a useful member of society and just enjoy. I think each and every one of us, need to enjoy our lives. Here I am. I'm on the other side of the world. I'm in Thailand right now. You guys are in Arizona and Utah, and talk about the technology and the tools that we have today to connect with one another and to stay sober together. There's lots and lots and lots of things out there. So if you're suffering, seriously, we're here to push you to the top and help you find a new way of living. And you don't have to walk it alone. I mean, for heaven's sakes, we'll walk with you. No problem whatsoever. So,
Well, there's plenty of people willing to do it. And, the 12 steps, this 12th step talks about, having had finding your own success in your spirituality that you go give it away. So that is part of each individual's recovered or recovering people's step. But like I said, the reward comes in helping the people out. And it's the one place, Brent would say all the time in the meeting, it's the one place where people push you to the top and they're not nipping at your heels when trying to pull you down when you're trying to get up. And it's and there's probably a few things like that, but the recovery communities are a place that's really pushed to the stops. But it's not. You have to take the first steps. You have to take the first steps to go in there. Walking in, check it out, but at some point you raise your hand and say, I'm new here. And then you'll have people come up. I love the Islamic saying of take 2 steps towards God and he'll come rushing towards you. Mm-hmm. But you got to take those first 2 steps. Mm-hmm. And I think that's probably permeated through a lot of different faith traditions.
So you have to wear a suit when you first come in. I mean,
if you want to show out to everybody how important you are in your own mind.
I couldn't have said it better. That was good.
A long, slow process for me to become one of the many.
What a joy it's been to watch Phillip, grow and change and go through this process. It's just so fun to watch other people. Like you said earlier, you can't see it in yourself, but when you watch other people go through this stuff, man, it's such a treat. I mean, it is absolutely a treat to watch.
It's the payoff.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
To watch people succeed. We don't fail anymore. We succeed.
That's right. I love it. Well, this has been a great podcast. Thank you for your time, Phillip. Brent, as always, very, very honored to be able to help get this word out. And for our listeners, check us out on all the usual places that your podcast, obviously you're watching this or listening to that, but check out pusheachothertothetop.com where you can see all of the other resources that we have available to you. And if you're so inclined, you want to reach out to one of us, please drop us a note and we'd be happy to connect. So
absolutely.
That'll do it.
Thank you for doing this. This was a new experience for me. It's usually me and Brent in some corner with a beverage talking and saying these things. So it's nice to be able to do this in this format.
Oh, that's awesome. I love it. And
we'll have to do it again.
Well, definitely. Let's do it again. All right. We'll see you, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks, Jonathan. Thanks, Brent.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for listening to Push Each Other to the Top. Brent's story is a reminder that even in our darkest moments, there's still a path forward and someone willing to walk it with us. If this episode meant something to you, share it. And if you're struggling right now, please know you're not alone. Follow the show wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss the next story. And if you can, leave a quick review. It helps more people find these conversations. New episodes drop soon. We hope you'll come back. Continue listening for behind the scenes moment after we ended the episode.
You think about the review, we're talking about the resources, like walking in. I would travel. I thought I was going to have to give up my occupation.
Oh,
and then I would travel, but I would go to AA meetings in different cities that I was at.
Yeah.
But you had to call ahead to the central office to have them pick a meeting for you, or eventually they published these little red books that had the phone numbers in each one. Now there's an app.
Yeah.
There's an app that has your GPS location and has the nearest meeting to you wherever you're at, that you can just pop in and do that. So
I have an app on my phone. I just tap and it shows me where the nearest meeting is and all the times and what the discussion's about.
People have surgeries, they get homebound. Maybe the local guys will come over and do it. But if you need a meeting, there's Zoom options now, especially since COVID. There is tons of Zoom options for people.
So cool.
Technology's really kind of helped
for sure
our deal once they reach out.
That's awesome. Well, cool, guys. Thank you so much. Wish you well. Have a good.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thanks for all your help, man.
I love it.
This wouldn't be possible without you. So
I love it. I love doing it. So
Phillip, thank you, sir. Appreciate
See you later.
See you later.
Keep us in touch when you're coming back to the world here. If you come back, we always think we're going to lose you. We know how much you'd love it over there.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. Even when it's raining.
It's storming.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, guys.
Talk to you later. Okay. Bye.
See you later.